Hi. How's it going? Hello. How's it going? You all had gelato. What's up with the sugar rush? Where did it all go? I'm Camila in Spanish. My mom calls me Camila when she's really mad. And here we'll introduce. You'll each kind of go over it, but this is Isaac.
Hi guys, or Isaac, following the same note.
Right, Camila is my Starbucks name. Camila is the family name. Okay.
I'm really excited to be with you guys here, and I'm part of Univision, our digital influencer group within the studio.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leslie, and I'm social media manager at Casanova. We deal with a large variety of clients focusing on Hispanic advertising and sometimes taking a total market approach depending on the client needs. But we do have clients ranging from government, entertainment, auto, CPG brands, and really taking a stab at all the social needs. Our social team focuses on really developing social strategies, going through anything ranging from community management, influencer relations, and social analytics, from a list of other things, but it's the gist of what we do.
Cool. So we got some smart Latinos over here. So first of all, we're just going to kind of go over multicultural and like, what does that even mean? What is multicultural marketing? What is multicultural? What is a multicultural influencer campaign? And I think we're going to use Latin and the Hispanic demographic as a case study for this. And also just because it's a huge buying power in the country, and it's a huge market that a lot of brands are trying to figure out and learn, how do we tap into this market and how do we do it effectively? Not just, do we do campaigns completely in Spanish? Do we do them in Spanglish? How many Spanish words when you're copywriting for social content, how many Spanish words in one sentence should we use? Should we use 2 words, 3 words? Like, where's that happy threshold? And I think when you have the Hispanic demographic being, why should brands even work with the Hispanic market? Is it because the Hispanic demographic is statistically 5 times more likely to be brand loyal and share your content and comment and like and repost? Or is it because this Latinx millennial generation is a huge buying power and these are credit card holders? Or maybe because the Hispanic market is consuming content on their smartphones 2.5 hours per day more than the average smartphone consumer. So, so many different reasons. And I think we see this across the board. I don't know if you guys do, but I get targeted ads from Target in Spanish. And how do you reach this multidimensional, multicultural generation where, I, for example, and you guys may be able to relate, but I'm first generation American. I speak Spanish at my house with my parents, but I watch The Voice like everybody else, and I watch what everybody else is watching on Netflix. And, how do you find, in the spirit of authenticity and really creating authentic campaigns with your influencers, how as a brand can you choose influencers that really resonate and that really represent those emotional, cultural roots that somebody you're trying to target, a consumer, has and shares, but is also relevant. So I think kind of finding that happy medium is what we're going to focus on. So I'm going to start with Leslie. So let's talk about what are maybe a few components, 2, 3, what do you call a successful multicultural campaign? What does that mean to you, and what does success mean in that?
Okay, and I'm just going to add on to this happy hour drinking game because I'm going to start off with 3 things that are really important, and you guys have heard it over and over today. But the first, I think, is really hitting on the authenticity key point, and I know that gets thrown around. It's been thrown around for 2 or 3 years now, and I think it goes far beyond finding authentic content that, finding an influencer that would just mesh well with your brand. It's going into like the nitty-gritty of the specific content. So authenticity representing the influencer's passion points, their interests, someone that would mesh well with the values of your brand and something that they could represent well is part of that authenticity key point. Not only that, but focusing on what would work well on their feed, what content would perform best for them in terms of the tone that they're putting out. It's giving them that creative liberty to be themselves in a world where everyone's kind of dictating what influencers are doing nowadays, giving them that experience and that creative liberty to just be free. And so I think authenticity is the big point there. The second one would be relevance, and just being relevant in today's world where there's like constantly something happening every day. Relevant in the time of the year that you're putting out content, or themes, holidays, things that you're putting forth and including in your briefs so that these influencers can follow. And the last one being respectful. Being respectful towards the content you're putting out, the consumer that's going to receive it, and also the influencer that's putting together this content. So one example for that is our Dia de los Muertos campaign with Open Influence. We partnered with Open Influence to support Dia de los Muertos through the California lottery, and that was a really successful campaign, also very painful in the way that, you know, we had to go through a lot of vetting and a lot of brand guidelines because it was a government account. And so being able to find influencers that were Hispanic, not only Mexican, because Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, is something that is celebrated mainly by Mexican families, but also connecting Hispanic influencers that had some sort of connection to this holiday, whether it be through friends, whether it be interests that they've had, and really putting out great content. We had people and influencers like Vivian Fabiola and Patty Rodriguez who did a great job at including the themes of this holiday. And yeah, and I think just giving that respectful tone to everything that they would do really connects a great brand with a great partner, an influencer.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, first of all, great points. And second of all, I think in the spirit of, again, the theme of the whole summit being authenticity and being respectful and mindful of that authenticity, I think one thing that, you know, working with the Hispanic market or really any multicultural market is making sure that you aren't using cliches and stereotypes, right? So again, you know, not every Latino person in this country is Mexican, right? So and also, you know, that's something to think about. Where's your family from, for example?
My family's from Argentina.
Me too. We'll talk.
See, we just got to know each other.
We'll talk after. And you? Mexico. Okay, so 2 out of 3 already weren't from Mexico, and you would have never thought, right? So I think also acknowledging about being respectful that, you know, Cinco de Mayo is something that Americans think is Latin, but it's not really what traditional Mexican families, it's not like the biggest traditional Mexican family holiday. So being mindful of that. So with that being said, for Isaac, how important is it for you to work with influencers who are really in tune with their cultural roots? And where do you find that sweet spot between someone who is, you know, trendy and relevant for modern times and for the modern consumer, but also still have, you know, they have their own hints of their culture and their ethnicity and those roots?
Sure. I think for us, I'm talking about the age of relevance, it's probably hasn't been more relevant to be Hispanic in a very long time. Right now, we feel that multicultural is the new mainstream, not necessarily in numbers. I mean, numbers don't lie, but also the way that they're affecting culture. When you look at music, I mean, 2017, you guys all, if you listen to the radio or Spotify, you listen to Despacito. That's the reality.
I was in the middle of the desert in Jordan once, and the guy was like riding a donkey. I'm not even exaggerating. He was like missing teeth, but he was listening to Despacito on his smartphone. Like,
so we're relevant all over the world now. And when you look at YouTube, the top most played music videos are from Latino artists. Last year, again, as well as J Balvin doing something with Beyonce. So Ozuna, you see all these Latin players becoming more and more relevant to really influencing the culture across pop culture, media. So for us, we kind of look at it through 2 lenses. Univision is the most traditional company you can probably look at, probably as close to ABC, Disney. When it comes to traditional programming, some of the programming is really old, telenovelas. So a few years ago, we realized that, you know, a lot of people are not watching telenovelas. You're probably not watching novelas. You're watching Netflix, Game of Thrones, you know, Breaking Bad. A lot of people are not watching content in Spanish. So we have to evolve with that and part of that evolution is working with influencers. So pairing a very traditional perspective and looking for influencers who are super relevant right now and doing the same trends that everybody is doing, if it's fidget spinners or, I mean, just to give you like silly ideas, right? But for us, it's how do you, among all the noise, how do you make sure that the culture is ingrained with them? Because everybody can, you know, everybody's savvy. They know when a ad is being placed to them, but they also know when someone is not being authentic. And authentic in the way that you're using stereotypes, right? So I know I can relate to a commercial that uses the cultural nuances without using Spanish or without saying, hey, you know, chancla or Mexican. I can relate because there's more creativity into that commercial or that spot. So for us, is really finding that middle spot, and we really rely on the influencer to do that. So we work with the brands. They usually come with a creative brief and say, hey, this is kind of our goal. We want to reach this audience. This is our big creative. But then we also lean into the influencer to see, because they're the ones that are facing the audience. They know what the audience wants. They know what the audience likes, what they react to. So we do lean into the influencer to give us their creative take and how to make sure that we're tapping the deepest cultural nuance for that specific campaign. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it's a little tricky, but we do, I think, we work with over 150 creators right now, and all of them fit within this kind of like unicorn land where they do, you know, again, are trendy, but they can lean into their cultural nuances or traditions.
Right. And I think, you know, tapping into, it's so important, like you said, tapping into staying away from the stereotypes and making sure you're really focusing on pillars of the culture, of whichever culture is in question, whether it's, you know, in this case, we're talking about Hispanic market, but, you know, whether it's family, and that's a general theme that resonates very strongly in the Hispanic market, or you know, long distance. There's a big theme of you have some family in the States, some family in Central America or South America or Europe, you know, always staying connected. So if your brand is, you know, if you're a Verizon, just to give a random example, if you're Verizon, maybe, you know, use, oh, look, we're, you know, staying connected with family who long distance. That will resonate a lot better than this is a campaign that we're going to launch on Cinco de Mayo, right? So.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's been finding those passion points. So a really good example, T-Mobile, telecom company. You know, if you look at the telecom world, it's not as an exciting of a product, right? But they have managed to make it super exciting. Really, really exciting. They've partnered with J Balvin for all of his major releases. We've done an influencer campaign, 360 campaign, TV, radio, linear, and an influencer, where they're working directly with J Balvin and launching even his last song, Reggaeton. So there are ways where these companies lean into the passion points, music being one, the huge one of them.
Right.
You don't have to understand the language to move to Latino rhythms. Food is another one. Sports is another one.
Soccer
and then football as well. Like,
right.
You know, we all grew up playing soccer and watching soccer.
Football.
But we do love watching basketball or football. So those are some of the biggest passion points that we found that a lot of brands are being very genuine and very smartly targeting those passion points.
Totally. And I think also taking advantage of one thing that's important to remember with multicultural markets is that you want to make, or I would say, and please argue if you feel differently, but I would say that it's important to make sure that these multicultural markets that you're working with, let's say Hispanic, don't feel like the Hispanic consumer doesn't feel like they're separate to the mainstream consumer that the company's trying to target. So if it's Mother's Day, right? Mother's Day just passed. Maluma, one of the world's arguably biggest stars right now, and he's Hispanic, just posted a picture of him weirdly kissing his mom, but that's a separate topic. But, you know, being close to your mom is a big pillar of the culture, Latin culture. So for Mother's Day, instead of doing a completely separate campaign about, you know, your mom, why don't we integrate it into like a holiday that everybody celebrates and everybody talks about? So with that being said, Leslie, when a company like Univision or, you know, let's take T-Mobile is working with J Balvin, when you look at that kind of a campaign, what in a campaign stands out to you? What makes you think, wow, you know, this multicultural effort that they're putting in is really, this is strong, this is epic. So what are the points that you look for?
I think there's a lot to go into that specific question, but most specifically, I think what the main brands are doing, and I can't speak for those brands specifically, but what like the target, like Target's doing, for example, to target the Hispanic market. What they're doing is really focusing on the diversity of this all, and like making relevant the fact that, you know, Hispanics don't come in one shape, one language or anything. They're being fluent in the way that they shift from Spanish, English. But also, like, the main thing is they're the trendsetters. They're setting these trends that are really representing Hispanic consumers and the Hispanic market. And so when I look at that, it's kind of like, I saw this quote the other day, and it basically said, like, don't just ride a wave, like, be that wave, create that wave for the market that you're trying to target. And this goes into, like, if you're doing an influencer campaign, it's, a lot of people have said it today, but it's not just following that celebrity, it's not following the biggest, it's not choosing the biggest followings for certain influencers. It's really connecting with those people that are being trendsetters, but that also might have a small following and connect a lot better with their following, with their fans. And so that's what truly makes an impactful influencer partnership to me, is finding those right people that may not have extravagant numbers as far as followings, but they might just have the appropriate engagement rates that might connect better with their following in terms of the true connections, emotional connections, and basically interests that they're interested in. But yeah, I do think that, you know, focusing on the type of influencers that you're going for, and not just doing it because, oh, I need to have an influencer partnership because it'll give me the reach that I want. It's really finding those people that will advocate for you in a powerful and impactful way.
Yeah, I think finding the right people is super important. And I know we only have a few minutes left, so I'm just going to do one question for both of you to answer. I think for me, for the Israeli Tourism Board, what we've done a lot is we've tried to reach the Hispanic market through micro-influencers all the way to the biggest land celebrities you can imagine, and taking them all to Israel to experience Israel. That way they can share that emotional experience with their followers. So I think for us, identifying the right people and identifying the right influencers has been very strategic. So I think for people who are working with brands and looking to target the Hispanic market and work with those influencers, what is just the best advice, just a tip to take with them as they leave the summit today? What is something that you would recommend in their future endeavors?
I'm just going to echo.
It's pretty vague. It was pretty vague.
Really
Sorry,
vague.
that was.
I'll echo what you said, Leslie. I think it is a lot of finding the person that is a good fit. So, for instance, you know, if it has to do with music, like just because they have a big following or they dropped a single yesterday doesn't mean they're a good fit. You know, maybe they've been doing dance for a very long time, or they've been in the music space. For us, that's really what takes up the longest time, really finding an influencer. Again, we're always like searching for unicorns. We have software where we have interns, we have employees who are trying to find the perfect influencer, but then on top of that is also brand safety. One of the things that we kind of are the biggest advocates is brand safety, and we try to not pitch anybody that will have even just the slightest thing that the brand will say, why did you pitch this to me? And we have a bunch of categories that will essentially disqualify them, whether it's, you know, a fake gun or violence or drugs, even though in some states it might be legal, and in California it's different, but we don't want to put it in front of the brand and say, hey, you guys are recommending people that don't reflect our image. For instance, Walmart or P&G, they're very, very conservative. So one, really good fit, and two, make sure that they're absolutely brand safe, because they're the face of your brand, whether you like it or not, when they're on Instagram or Facebook.
I agree. I totally agree with all of that. And also, I would probably say, like, I would hope that brands are listening to the type of research that, you know, as agencies we're giving them, or as partners we're giving them, to really say, like, Hispanic specifically is part of the general market. It's becoming the general market, multicultural in general, and having being bold and being able to listen to those insights and just go for an idea, try it out, test it out. If it doesn't work, it didn't work. But I think one of the things that someone said today was the higher the risk, the higher the reward. And I fully believe that. I think it takes a lot to be bold and to be a brand that'll stand for something.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one thing, I read this quote once somewhere, and it really stayed with me. That was, similar to what you said, if you want to be outstanding, you have to be willing to stand out. And I think in a market that is just growing so tremendously, the Hispanic market, I think it's worth, like you said, it's worth taking the risk and listening to the experts who know this demographic better than anybody, because we are the demographic. So who better to advise? So I think that about wraps it up. I'm pitching you out to answer questions after this, so I apologize in advance, but we're all welcome to answer questions if you have any, and have a great rest of your summit.